Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, all you seekers of a brave new world. Welcome to all you binary, non-binary, and hexadecimals alike. It's time to shed your excesses. This is a tin-foil-free hat zone. So if you pull up a chair and get comfy in your own skin, as we can bring you another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. In today's episode, we're blurring the lines once again between biology and technology, but not as you'd expect. For those rev heads among us who like the thrill of going fast, we'll see how you like it when no one's behind the wheel. And speaking of the need for speed, it's time for an update on commercial supersonic flight. But all these are just headlines without substance, if not for the man who holds all the deets. Welcome to the microphone, Matthew Dickerson.
Thank you very much, James Eddy. Pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to be here. My ears are still ringing slightly. I've come back from the Melbourne F1 or Grand Prix.
Wow,
I still call it Grand Prix, but I had someone say to me...
Grand Prix.
Yeah, that's the one. They said it's still called Grand Prix. Oh, I think so. F1 is what everyone seems to call it now, but surely it's still called GP. Yeah, I thought so. But anyway, whatever, GP, F1,
We're
whatever.
traditionalists.
Traditionalists, that's right. And what I do enjoy about the Grand Prix, about F1...
Besides the extremely loud noise.
Well, no, I don't enjoy that. I must admit I wear earplugs. I take the ones that the drivers wear, the ones that they squish up in their fingers and put in their ears. I actually wear those to try and somewhat dull the noise, although it's still loud with those. But the vibration through your chest is what gets me. But I love the innovation. I love all the latest technology. I love the fact that they're trying to eke out literally thousandths of a second. Just fine-tuning so many little bits. The wind tunnel, I would have a ball in their wind tunnel just going, what about this? How about if we try that? Just some little minor change there. But what...
It's like the luge, and maybe going to have to talk about the luge sometime.
Maybe.
You ever watch the luge on the Winter Olympics?
Yeah.
Thousandth of a second.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. But that's not even putting your foot down. That's really all in the first 10 metres probably of that when you push off to begin with. And the speed that you jump on is probably determining the speed at the bottom 30 seconds or 50 seconds later. So what I do like about the F1 is all of the technology and just the amount of computers and the things they plug in. It's a far cry to the old days of Jack Brabham. Jack Brabham, of course, is the only driver ever to win a world championship in a car that he essentially designed. His name, it was called Brabham Repco Racing. I think Repco did the engines.
Vague memory of that,
So he won 3 world championships, not all of them in that car, but...
Pit stops back in those days went for a minute or so, didn't they?
A bit different to 2 seconds. But it's just every little thing has just been tweaked just a second here, or not even a second, 100th of a second here, 1,000th of a second there, to get to where...
pit stops now are like 5 seconds tops, aren't they?
2 seconds.
2 seconds.
If 5 seconds, that means you might have lost the race if you're 5 seconds stopped. And how long you stop still for is what they recorded on.
2 seconds.
2 seconds.
It's not even slowing down, is it? It's just change my tyre as I'm rolling.
That's right. You go to your local car, your tyre deal, and they say it'll be an hour to change your tyres. Well, that's it. I'm getting a Formula 1 team. And if you're going to pay the amount that the Formula 1 team gets paid, then sure, you can have your tyres changed in 2 seconds. But what was interesting at the race on Sunday was, of course, the good old weather. Now, with all that technology...
the Melbourne weather.
All of the forecasting...
Apologies to Melbourneites out there, but...
all the technology they've got at their fingertips and all the discussion you heard with the team bosses and the drivers talking about when to come in, the Aussie, Oscar Piastri, there were 2 Aussies in the race, but Oscar was the contender sitting in second place, really lost the race. And he might not have got past Lando Norris, but he was certainly up there challenging for that based on the team or the driver. I probably think more the team just getting it wrong by half a lap as to when they bring you in for a tyre change, given the wet weather.
Wow.
And that's it. You've got all this technology. You've got all these things that are just trying to squeeze a thousandth of a second, but good old-fashioned Mother Nature comes along and says, you can trick me. And it is incredible. I find it fascinating just how terrible the cars are on slicks with just a little bit of rain there. And they put the wet weather tyres on, and they're suddenly going at maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds a lap slower, depending on how much rain. But it just goes to show how good those wet weather tyres are as well, which, of course, effectively we're all driving around with wet weather tyres because we wouldn't want to be as slippery as they are.
It's hard to do the tyre change, a pit stop, when you're just driving around town.
When you're driving around town, it starts raining. Better pull in and get those tyres changed. But it is fascinating. And again, there were predictions about when the rain would come and how long it would come for. And the drivers, you're hearing the conversations with the drivers saying, should I come in this lap? I don't want to get it wrong by half a lap because it just turns into ice. And sure enough, they got it wrong by half a lap and it turned into ice. So, with all that.
So with all the money that goes into F1 these days, they still haven't spent any money on controlling the weather.
They should control it. That's it. They should surely just construct a tent.
So much easier to control Mother Nature, so you can have particularly if you believe all the conspiracy theories, yeah?
Well, that's right. Bill Gates, I saw on the sideline somewhere, making the weather do something strange. But just a lid, put a covering over it. They do it with soccer matches and they do it with baseball. Surely they can do
all
it
indoors.
with...
Indoor F1. What
Indoor
about the
F1?
echo?
Imagine
You're going to
that.
have to soundproof all the walls and stuff like that.
I've done go-karting indoors, and that was noisy because it did echo around a bit, but go-karts aren't quite as noisy as an F1 car. So, imagine that. That'd be incredible. Anyway, good fun, and I think we'll see a few wins throughout the year from at least one Aussie, probably not Jack Doohan, but from at the very least, I think Oscar Piastri has a few
I love
victories.
it that we've got so many Aussies there in contention.
Yeah, having two.
Yeah,
two
it used to be just Alan Jones, or
right.
just Jack Brabham, and that was it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, back in the old days. Anyway, enough of this jibber-jabber. Let's get on with our stories. Now, feeding a population of 9 billion people is just going to be an epic challenge. Best estimates have us at that point in just 12 years' time. Now, traditional farming methods, they've lent heavily into technology over recent years, adopting more and more efficient methods to improve yields and stave off famine for our grateful populace. But a revolutionary method of growing food is on its way, and produce is set to hit the UK supermarket shelves in the very, very near future, Matt.
And we have talked about this a little bit, so it's probably more an update than anything else. But lab-grown meats, we've talked about some of those and the processes there.
Now, the name, you've just dropped it there, and a whole lot of people in their brains are switching off, going, lab-grown meats, and shaking their fists. And
how can that be possible?
But the lab-grown meat, so we were talking about things grown in Petri dishes.
Yeah.
It's real meat, though.
It's the same components as we've talked about before. There are the 92, 93 naturally occurring elements, and you put those together in the right combinations and you get whatever that compound is. So whatever...
Well, particularly if you start off with a stem cell, which has come from an animal, and then you just grow everything from that stem cell, then you've got effectively what was growing inside the animal anyway. It's just grown outside of the animal.
Correct. So they call them cell-cultivated products, but as you say, essentially a stem cell, and they then control the environment that it's in, so they give it the perfect growing environment. Now, they've got to feed it stuff. They've got to feed it nutrients. They've got to feed it energy.
They irrigate it with a fluid that's got all that the stuff that it needs.
Yeah, and it grows the same as it would grow on the animal, but it's growing, as you say, in a laboratory, in a petri dish or whatever it might be. So we've talked about it before. Way back in 2020, Singapore approved the sale of cell-cultivated meat. So you could go into a restaurant in Singapore, not many, I would imagine, but some, or maybe one, that you could go and order. I'll have that meat there that I know is grown in a lab. Thanks very much. And so you'd obviously go there to order that meat, I would think. In the US, you started getting some places that you could order that in 2023, Israel in 2024, and there are factories starting to pop up all over the place. But the good old UK isn't quite convinced that this is the way to go forward. So there's at the moment the Food Standards Agency, the FSA, is saying we're going to expedite the approval process for lab-grown foods, and we think we'll have it ready to go within 2 years. So that's expediting it. So
right. So it's not the very, very near future, but it's the very near future. I think 2 years is still not too bad.
Well, it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to the age of the planet, then it's the very, 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 very near future.
Yeah.
But maybe not compared to Singapore. So that'll effectively be about 7 years after Singapore approved that. And you understand that countries that have good, safe standards for their food want to go through a process. Yeah. But you kind of feel like that's taking a little bit too long. And so the UK government's also established the Regulatory Innovation Office, the RIO, and their job is to enhance the market rollout of innovative technologies. So they're basically pushing the FSA to get their act together to get this onto the tables across the UK. Right. Bottom line is, it's happening. It's happening in some countries already. It's going to happen in some other countries. It's going to happen across the world. And the really interesting part, and I did this before, the first time we talked about it, I've got some friends that are vegetarians. So I rang them and said, how do you feel about this? Do you not eat meat because you don't like the taste of it? Do you not eat meat because you're worried about the methane production of cows adding to our climate change? Or do you not eat meat because you're worried about cruelty to animals? What is it? And I got a combination of answers. I talked to a few people. But when it got to the bottom line, would you eat this lab-grown meat? All of them still felt a bit uncomfortable.
It's a dilemma, isn't it?
It is.
And it's going to be a dilemma for even people who are omnivores and carnivores anyway, right?
That's right.
So I just think it's a different way of doing things. I think it's necessary. It's going to have to happen. We had synthetic fertilizers came around in the late the second decade, so it was just before the 1920s that we started using synthetic fertilizers. But we needed to use synthetic fertilizers because we just didn't have enough cow poo and sheep poo and pig poo to use as fertilizer to keep a population which was then back approaching 1.5 billion people. So the guy who was responsible for World War I and giving Germany the ability to build bombs and stuff for World War I was also the guy who gave us the recipe to make this synthetic fertilizer and ended up getting the Nobel Prize for it, right? So that was after World War I. This is the guy who invented mustard gas. So I'm just giving you a bit of history here. We needed that revolution, and this is the next revolution, I think, in agriculture, and it will support what we're actually giving. It'll support the production that's occurring currently traditionally, and it won't. I don't think it's going to take over though.
Well, I think it'll just be an alternative one.
Yes.
You'll say,
yeah.
Here's a bit of meat you can buy that was grown on a cow, and here's a bit of meat that was grown in a laboratory.
Yeah.
One of the things, I haven't tasted it yet, I'm keen to actually try some lab-grown meat, but one of the things when I've watched pictures or looked at pictures of lab-grown meat, it doesn't look like it's got the same texture. No. So it looks like a hamburger meat rather than a steak.
It's all sort of a mince.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but the nutrient value of it should be whatever you want it to be. If you like a bit of marbling, I personally don't. I don't like the fat. People call it marbling. I just call it fat through a bit of steak. If you like that, they can make it with that sort of marbling.
Yeah, they can lace it with fat,
They can grow it the way you want it grown. If you want it pure meat, like I like it without all the fat, then you can get it like that. So it's how you want to do it. But there's still some debate around the world. So Italy, for example, or some parts of Italy, have implemented bans on lab-grown meat. So here's the UK trying to expedite the approval, and you've got not that far away in Italy saying,
well, I wonder what the logic is behind the ban.
It's fear factor, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know there's logic.
There is a pushback against science in a number of different areas now. So people are saying they're not trusting science, but that's come down to a lot of conspiracy theory and misinformation too, I've got to say, and I'll say that in a big loud voice. I think, yeah, good.
So it's interesting where it's going, but I actually see that when you get countries like the US and the UK, from an Australia point of view, then we often copy what happens in the US and the UK. So
always wait for our big brothers to.
That's right. It is a bit like that. So once they start going that way, I think it won't be that long because I want to try it.
So do I.
I'm not going to go to Singapore to try it, but I want to
It's
try it.
It's expensive now, though. That was one issue that was really, really expensive. So I wonder if it's becoming more cost effective.
Well, presumably as you start to ramp up production, same with anything, you produce it more, you get better manufacturing processes, and we're talking about manufacturing here, not farming, so it's a different way of approaching it, but you get better manufacturing standards, you build bigger factories, you can get efficiencies there, economies of scale, then I think it will get cheaper and cheaper. But again, the bottom line, as you said, we've got to feed a bunch of people. We've got to work out a way to do that.
We're not shrinking in population. We've been bringing you news for a year now of brain-computer interfacing by implanting computer chips into people's brains. Well, our next story coming out of Melbourne has flipped this idea fair on its head by integrating human neurons into silicon chips. Yes, you heard that right, folks. And this is it, Matt. We're on our way to a world of Terminator cyborgs, aren't we? It's going to happen for us, isn't it?
Is this a computer that's got human additives, or is it a human with computer additives? It starts to get a very grey area about which way is it going.
We're blurring the lines in a dangerous way, I'm going to say.
And the first thing I thought of was Roald Dahl used to write some wonderful kids' stories, but he used to write some very clever adult stories. And one of those, and I don't remember the entire story, but I do remember it ended up essentially with a woman who had put her husband's brain in a jar so the brain could still process what was going on, and then she could just live her life with the husband still sitting on the shelf there. and so, again, it almost feels like that you take someone's brain and you put it in a computer. It's not quite like that. They're using human neurons on a silicon chip. So they're not saying, hey, James, we'll just take a bit of your brain and add it to a computer, but they're using the same neurons. Now, why would you want to do that? You'd say, surely we've got the hang of it with computer chips. Surely we're getting pretty good at producing chips and doing what we want them to do. But if you start to use neurons, they found a couple of things. One thing is that we actually don't take much power to run. We're pretty efficient with power. So to use human neurons means you can actually build a computer that's got less power requirements compared to a similar computer just built out of silicon chips. The second thing is in terms of being able to learn, and this is where it gets scary with AI.
And making new connections.
New connections, that's it.
Jeepers creepers.
Because the human brain, we don't understand everything that works in the human brain, but we do know that when we learn things, especially when we're growing up, when our brain's forming, there's all these new connections that are being made in our brain. Yeah. And what they did was they found that they put some neurons together and about the brain the size of an insect. So not that large in terms of compared to the human brain.
So far, folks.
So far. You hit the nail on the head. They took the amount of neurons that would be the equivalent of a small insect, and they essentially allowed that chip to watch Pong being played, a very simple video game, simple, that a 5-year-old could play. A 5-year-old could watch and pick up. And this computer learned by creating new connections with these neurons how to play Pong.
And grabbed a table tennis paddle or whatever and started playing it itself, didn't it?
Well, that's next week. So, and so this is really interesting. Where do you get to with this process? You start to get this interface. Now, this was all...
Now, I'm seeing like a glass box server with a whole computer workings in it, and then this pink mass just swirling out of it, this blob and then the world ends.
It sounds like
the credits roll, and then we just know what happens afterwards.
It feels like Day of the Triffids, except instead of the Triffids, it's the brains. Day of the brains, baby. So all of this comes from, again, lab-grown human stem cells. So stem cells that are basically taken from, and it does start with a human, starts from blood samples from a human, then they grow those human neurons and then put these together. And again, not that far yet. We're at the very edge of it. And this has all been unveiled at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. So it's only very recent this has all been shown. But again, today, learning to play Pong. Tomorrow, who knows what, and who knows what new connections.
Well, perhaps, major brain injuries, you can repair the neural tissue.
Well, they haven't talked about that yet, but that does make sense. What you're saying makes sense. What they're talking about is that possibly you could use this for drug testing because you've got these new learnings that could happen. You possibly use it with an AI, but a biological AI, so you're actually able to learn more because we talk about how much power...
That sounds like doomsday.
It does,
right there, you've just said it out loud.
How much power AI uses, how many processing chips are used for AI. Use something that's more efficient for energy, and then you start to build a biological AI computer. But then, how far does it go before it says, actually, I think I'm a human. I think now, with all the information I've got access to, which, let's face it, is the internet, I now can think like a human and forget learning how to play Pong. I can learn how to get the nuclear codes, and I can learn how to sort out this world that we live in here.
Folks, if you've ever wondered what nervous laughter really sounds like, it sounds like this.
The box itself, it's only about the size of a shoebox, so it's only small at this stage. But again, we're talking about the amount of neurons that an insect has. So what's wrong with building that large or connecting a lot of those together? So it's scary, it's interesting, it's fascinating.
It's very interesting, isn't it?
It's interesting.
Fascinating, and we just love to learn stuff and we love to create new things. But where are we going to draw the line?
It'll be safe because someone will say, no, we've gone too far, let's just stop it there. I'm sure that'll happen.
And then someone will go, no.
One step further.
I think we can go a bit further. The name Maserati has been synonymous for decades with sexy, sleek, sporty driving. The very name conjures up an image of an alpha male in driving gloves and Ray-Bans, tearing through the continental countryside with a sexy girl in the passenger seat, white scarf licking at the breeze out of the open top. But this visual image is about to get something of a makeover, as Maserati's AI robo-racer is breaking speed records and showing the world that autonomous vehicle racing is no longer a pipe dream, Matt.
Well, I love the idea here that we've got AI driving cars for land speed records. And when I was growing up, I remember reading about Donald Campbell. Donald Campbell, was breaking records.
Hang on, was he an Aussie? He was an Aussie.
No, I think he's a Brit. Yeah, that's right. But he did do
claim that for
Australia.
Australia.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, he did some of his work in South Australia, Lake Eyre in South Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe, and I was thinking the same thing. That, I remember him doing some stuff in Australia, but
60s and 70s, wasn't it?
yeah. Now he has the unique record of being the only person in the history of time that we know who has broken the land speed record and the water record, so a boat and a car, in the same year, 1964. He broke both records. So that's keen. That's pretty keen.
It's a big year.
It is a big year for him because so much preparation goes into a land speed record. And I think, and I could be wrong on this one, but I think the record that he broke in 64, where he did about 649 kilometres an hour in a car, was the highest speed in a car or a vehicle that was driven by the wheels. After that, people came along and said,
rocket.
forget, yeah, that's right, rocket. Let's just strap in a jet engine.
On a set of bike wheels.
That's right. And that'll get us there. So I don't know if it's been beaten, but certainly if it was, it's maybe only recently, because that was a record that was held for a long time, where 649 kilometres driven by the wheel. So I had these images, and Donald Campbell was a bit of a dude. He was pretty cool. Imagine walking into a bar and there's Don Campbell sitting there. Yeah, I just clocked up 649 kilometres an hour. You know, what are you heroes doing?
Evil Knievel buying him drinks.
Exactly right. Now, he wasn't that successful. 3 years later, he did die trying to break another speed record.
Yeah.
So there were some pretty severe risks associated with it. But when you now go to Maserati, you go, it's just broken a record, 318 kilometres an hour. Well, Don Campbell puts you to shame. But that's the fastest we've got. This is a new world speed record for an autonomous vehicle.
No one at the wheel.
Where's the cool dude with the cool leather gloves that gets out and says, I just did 649 k's an hour? There's a car that just pulls up and there's no one behind the wheel.
Yeah, spooky.
Now, Maserati say that this is all about getting to the stage where you're helping AI learn how to drive a car. Now, I'm not sure that I want to jump in a taxi, for example, that does 318 kilometres an hour. It'd get me there quick, but I'm not sure that it'd feel that comfortable. And
not without some casualties on the way, yeah?
Not without a few people being taken out along the way. This car is capable, they boast about this car being capable of 325 kilometres an hour. That's with a human behind the wheel. Now, I don't know.
That's still pretty quick.
It's still pretty quick, that's right. But I don't know why it's so different with AI. Does AI say, oh, it's a bit scary. I'm a bit worried. That's right. I'm not going to go all the way. I'm just going to go to 318.
Very worried about this.
Surely AI is lighter than a human, but maybe not. Maybe there's so many sensors involved. Maybe that's why it couldn't quite get there. But 318 is pretty impressive. Basically, you've got a bunch of hardware. You've got advanced sensors, actuators, LiDAR, high-res cameras, precision sensors, so that basically you've got this car driving at this sort of speed. And I remember watching some of those land speed records from the Donald Campbell era, and you'd see this car flying on, and then there'd obviously be some little mistake, or maybe there's something on the salt plains or whatever, and next thing you know, there's this tumbling mass of metal and bits and pieces flying in every direction.
Whatever.
That's right. So I suppose part of the problem, or part of the process here, is about seeing if they can get AI to react at these speeds. If they can get it to handle itself at 318 kilometres an hour, then driving around the streets of San Francisco at 60 k's an hour is probably quite okay. They did this at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, so obviously you want a nice long runway. So this is where the NASA space shuttle landings.
So it's not the salt plains of Utah.
No, they didn't do it on salt plains. They went, and a runway is usually long enough, especially this one, because this is where the space shuttle used to land. So they used to have a nice long landing strip, so 4.5 kilometre strip to be able to land on there. But it's just getting closer and closer, isn't it, when we get to that point where we will have more and more cars on the road with no one sitting behind the wheel. It's still going to look strange, very strange. I remember when we used to have funniest home videos. I remember with a couple of friends, we did a video, and what we did to make it look like we were destroying a camera was we set up a mirror on the ground, and then we had someone down low steering the car, and then had someone sitting in the other side of the car holding onto a fake steering wheel to make it look like the steering wheel was on the right side, and then ran over the camera but was just running over the mirror to send it to Funny Home Videos to go, hey, look at this, there's no one in the driver's seat, or in that case there was someone in the driver's seat, but we'll try and make it look the other way around. But getting to that point where you see a car with no driver just driving along, it'd be a double take, wouldn't it? You'd be on the streets going, huh? What
the first that? Time.
And if it went past at 318, maybe that's right, if it went past 318, it definitely would be a double take. But good on Maserati. They're still using petrol cars for this, unfortunately, but I'm sure we'll get to the point where we'll see some EVs
Only
breaking
a matter
records.
of time. Now, how many phones do you currently run these days? Apparently one is simply not enough. With work calls and spam invading our precious time, more and more, that's our downtime I should say, many are turning to burner phones, or better still, burner numbers on the one phone, just to get a bit of quiet time. Now, Matt, blow me down and call me maybe, but I never thought a phone could ring for multiple numbers.
It's very cool, actually. And when I hear burner phone, of course, the first image I have is a drug deal going on, because you go and buy your burner phone to do your drug deal so you can't be traced, and that's what happens in the movie, so it must be correct.
Bingo.
This is a little bit different. It's a burner number. Now, there's a couple of ways to approach this. Many phones now come with dual SIM capabilities. One might be an eSIM, might be a physical SIM as well.
Yeah.
You could have dual physical SIMs. And so some people are saying, here's my number, which for many people, it's an identifier for life. I not always, but semi-regularly have a phone call from someone that I haven't had a phone call from for years. They just assume that I'm going to have the same number. They ring that number, they're going to get hold of me. So that is something where it's not quite your date of birth, but it's not far away from that being a number for life. But unfortunately...
You just made me think, my phone number, I think, has been the same phone number for about 20 years.
Exactly right. And it's not that unusual for someone to ring me from years gone by for whatever reason and say, hey, what are we doing here? Or can you help me out with that? It's something that they just expect to be able to get you when they ring that number. So that's fine, but we know that lots of numbers and email addresses get leaked with data leaks. So suddenly your number's out there being used by people who want to make phone calls to you, or worse still, send text messages to you. And text messages are still really effective because about 98% of text messages are opened, 37% of emails are opened. So anyone that's trying to reach you, target you, trick you into some scam, send some marketing stuff to you, wants to use text messages because you're much more likely to read that. Now, I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure why. Is it because we've read text messages for so long? I'm not exactly sure why, but that's the data shows that that's much more likely. But
that data probably reflects my own existence, I think.
Yeah, well, you see an email and you'll get around to it, but you see a text message, you do tend to look at it straight away.
Because it's only going to be a short little thing,
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. There are more and more companies now, whether they be telcos or whether they be virtual telcos, where they'll offer you numbers. Now, why would they want to do that? You can have a number, for example, when you go and book into a temporary accommodation site and you think, I don't want to use my normal number because maybe there'll be a leak one day and then I'll just get all these calls and I want to keep that number, then you can just get a temporary number. And you use that because I'm going to go and stay in this temporary accommodation. I only need that number for a couple of weeks while I get the text messages through for that, and then that's it. I can can it.
Well, the other one is getting a receipt from a store and say, can we have your mobile phone number? And I look at them and I think, I don't want to give you my mobile phone number because I just don't want the spam.
So you stick a second SIM card in, or you go for a virtual number, you give that store your number, they punch it in and they go, there you go, there's your receipt, you get the receipt, and then you get rid of that number a month later. And then they send you some marketing material and you don't respond to it because you don't get it because it's a number you never want to get marketing material from them. So it's a really clever thing to think of. You've got to plan it a bit though, because most people have already got their main number. They've put into a whole bunch of different sites. And so do you start doing it now and start using this other one for the secondary number when that number's already been leaked? Or do you say, you know what, I'm going to leave that number as the number I use for all those sites, and my friends, my special people, here's another number to use, which might change from time to time. So you're not going to get those phone calls from 5 years ago, but you might get the phone calls from your current group of friends. The great part about it is you can control those two numbers differently. So when it comes up on screen, you can see main number or secondary number, or call it different things if you like. You can go do not disturb on one number after hours, for example. The other number you can leave. So if a number your wife's got, you can ring that any time. But if it's a number that you might be a business number, you just go do not disturb at 5 o'clock. So leave me alone after hours.
I'm a big fan of this.
Well, it's happening more and more. And even if you don't have a phone that's dual SIM capable, having the ability to create that virtual calling number, that's able to be done as well. So it's quite a fascinating world. It sounds like it gets too complicated, but it depends how many scams you're getting, how many calls you're getting, how many unwanted calls you're getting, and how much flexibility you want to have in your life. And I think the big thing is now you've got dual SIM on many modern phones, but by using virtual SIMs or virtual numbers, you really is unlimited to the number of different numbers you could have and give out to people.
There you go. Okay, when was the last time you Googled your own name? It can reveal quite surprising results, and a little digging may just unearth some personal details that you didn't realise were available to the public. See, it all depends on what security settings you chose and which sites you chose to offer your dark secrets to. And then, of course, there's always the hackability of the organisations that hold your data. Matt, this is some more troubling news coming our way. Can you break the problem down a little and maybe provide a little more hope as well?
Well, there is a little bit of hope, and there is a way to solve the problem somewhat. When you Google yourself, which lots of people do, and they see some results there that they don't love, then there are possibly things you can do about it, but not in every case. So if you did something embarrassing 3 years ago when you stripped down the main street naked, then you do a Google search on your name, it's probably going to show that up.
Oh, I thought that was embarrassing behind me, but
didn't seem like a good idea at the time.
Why would you bring that up now?
So you say to Google, for example, can you please remove that from the search results because that was a bit embarrassing for me. Google's going to say, I'm sorry, but the article is out there. That's right, it's too juicy. The article is out there. Our algorithm is going to search that. It's going to find that because it's already posted on lots of other sites. So, sorry, just don't do it again next time, but it's too late then.
Yeah.
That's job done.
Stop doing nerdy roads down the main street.
But if, for example, you do a search and it shows up your Medicare number or your date of birth and you don't want that, or your personal mobile, not your burner mobile number, if you've got some information out there that might be confidential or personal in nature, you can actually report that to Google and say, can you please have these removed from searches? So, yes, you're not going to be able to remove that embarrassing moment, but you can have other information about you removed where Google agrees that it might be a breach of your confidentiality or put you at risk for maybe identity theft, that type of thing. So even though we think, it's out there on the internet now, that's it, it's gone, in many circumstances it is, but not everyone has seen those details about you yet, and the scammer mightn't have noticed those yet. So if you do search and you see something there that shouldn't be there, again, not just an embarrassing thing, something that's not factual, something that shouldn't be there, then you can get it removed. Now, keep in mind, if it is published on another site, so for example, if some site's got your name, date of birth, Medicare number, etc., and then Google picks it up, well, getting it taken out of search results is one thing, but it still might be sitting on the other site. So you still need to go and get it removed from there. But there have been very sad examples where confidential information has been put up by partners when they are no longer partners. So, for example, a bit of a way to attack their partner is to put up personal information about them. That sort of stuff you can get removed, but it doesn't stop the partner or the ex-partner from putting it up somewhere else. So Google can do their little bit to try and protect us, but it's not going to protect everything that possibly happens. So nudie runs aside, you can probably get some help out there.
Stop doing them, folks. The gaming world seems to be in something of an evolutionary shift as players switch from using consoles now to the more convenient option of using their phones. Matt, this sounds like one more symptom of phone tech digging its claws into users and just never, ever letting go.
I'm not sure if the console makers are over the moon about this, but in 2024, the entire game industry generated $187.7 billion. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
It's a moneymaker, isn't it?
It is. But of that, mobile gaming was 92.6. So let's call it half. Essentially half of the revenue generated by the gaming industry was the mobile gaming industry. Wow. Now, before I read those stats, I would have thought, yeah, sure, there's a bit on mobile gaming, but the consoles, they're really the ones doing the trade. They've got expensive games and people are paying a lot for consoles.
You get high-definition graphics. And,
you hook it up to your TV and that's fantastic. And that is all true, but bottom line is you've got your phone with you most of the time. Yeah. And for many people that live in congested areas, they're on a long commute to work often. They're sitting somewhere waiting. Even if you go and visit the doctor, you go to an appointment, just sitting there waiting. So a lot of people, that's their gaming scenario as they put out their phone.
Things of addiction. And so this is another way to not put your phone down.
Yeah, exactly right. So you've got accessibility of smartphones. You've got internet services that are good speed and fast. And you've also got the displays now, the high-res displays and the powerful processors. So the game is console quality. I don't know if I'd go quite so far as say it's
it's not the big screen, is it?
But it's not the big screen, that's right.
Look, I say my words with no judgment whatsoever, folks, because I'm a victim myself. I just have trouble putting my phone down because I'm not doing anything right now, so I'll just play a game. And it's not giving my brain a rest. I need to have a brain rest.
Well, you're spot on there, aren't you? Yeah, you sometimes need to have a rest away from it. You can't really relax while you're playing something. It's, I've got to watch out for that thing, and this is happening over here. But you've got platforms like Apple Arcade, Netflix games. They've got huge libraries, but again, you pay a monthly fee. And so many organisations now realise the way to riches is to work out a model that's going to generate recurring revenue. Forget about that one-off purchase. You want the recurring revenue. That's where it's all at. So it's interesting. Even I still find it incredible, 92.6 billion when so many games are free, so many games are cheap. $5 for a game seems like a lot of money to pay for a game. And you might be a few in-app purchases you might buy, but when you think about consoles being many hundreds of dollars, when you think about the games for consoles being $50 to $100, you think, how could it possibly generate almost the same amount as a console?
I think the thing about phones is that a game, where it's $2 or $5, people go, it's just $2 or $5. I'll just download it and see how I go with it. And so it's just such an easy decision, can be made on the spur of the moment without too much commitment. And next thing you know, you're giving your life to it.
That's right.
But then, you get sick of that game, so you just get another one. And it's just, so I don't know how regularly people are updating games.
Yep.
I am trying to have some control, so I'm not downloading games too frequently, but goodness me.
Just one an hour, that's all.
Yeah,
that's
one an hour, that's all I need, one every hour.
So to give you an idea of some of the growth here, the cloud gaming market was valued at $4 billion back in 2023, estimated to be $25 billion by 2029. So over that sort of 5-6 year period, growing quite dramatically.
Got to get a piece of some of that action there, Matt.
Yeah,
we've got to start developing some games. Has anyone got one that's got... Just thinking, have you got a frog that tries to cross a road?
Who'd play that? Who'd want to worry about jumping a frog across different things?
A little ball character, yellow ball that eats little things as it goes around a maze.
Yeah, I don't think there we go. I wouldn't worry about it. So, look, all quite fascinating, but the cross-platform functionality too, I think, is a big part of it. Many of the gaming consoles now, they're saying this game you can play on the console, but you can also play it in a mobile environment. So they're obviously leaning into the fact that they're losing some market share, so we better make sure we're still basically able to provide what our users want, which is basically mobile gaming. So, yeah, quite fascinating. And now they've just got to get to the point where you can hook it up to the big TV screen in the doctor's surgery. So you can sit there, play your game on the big screen.
Everyone else can watch you play Pong.
That's right.
A couple of weeks ago, we introduced you to Boom Supersonic. Now, they're an aviation company that's trying to restore the golden age of supersonic flight, tuning into the faint remnant echoes of the Concorde, which finished up 21 years ago. I say faint echoes because this prototype is breaking the sound barrier with a whisper. Is that right, Matt?
It is quite incredible. And one of the things they've just done recently is they did some supersonic flights over the Mojave Desert. And in doing that, NASA set up some photography to capture the shock waves. Now you think, well, how can you capture a shock wave? It's just air. You can't really see the air moving. But there's certain filters they use that detected air distortions. So they've been able to photograph these shock waves. But most importantly, the design of the aircraft is such that it doesn't actually produce the loud sonic boom. And so when they were doing this photography on the ground, as the plane flew over the top, there was no audible sonic boom. And one of the issues, of course, before was that London to New York was a popular flight for the Concorde, simply because it was over the ocean. They were allowed to fly at supersonic speeds. But going from LA to New York, no point the Concorde doing that because it wasn't allowed to go at supersonic speeds over land. Part of the whole challenge here for Boom Supersonic is to get to the point where they'll be given permission to fly over land, cutting in time, the amount of time you would spend flying from, say, LA, New York in half because you're doing cruising speeds of about Mach 1.7. Now, a little bit slower than the Concorde. Concorde did over 2, but Mach 1.7 is still not too bad. When most of the time, most of the commercial jetliners travel maybe 0.9, 0.95 Mach maybe. So you're getting close enough to
and you get to hop off at the other end and say, I broke the sound barrier.
Exactly right. How cool is that? That's very cool. So
made of the right stuff, you might say.
That's right. The pre-orders at the moment, they've got pre-orders from American Airlines, United Airlines, Japan Airlines, 130 Overture, they're called, the aircraft. 130 Overture aircraft have already been ordered. So these are the airlines that are saying, we want to be a piece of this action. And the dream of the CEO of Boom Supersonic is that you can basically fly anywhere. Any global flight will be no more than 4 hours. Now, that sounds pretty impressive.
That is.
And when you consider that
halfway around the world.
Yeah, some of the flights now are, say, 13 hours. You fly to LA or Dubai
Yeah.
from here in Australia. 13 hours, you go, well, 4 hours. That means it's not going twice the speed of those. It's probably 4 times the speed. I don't know what their plans are or whether they don't realise that you've got long distances over here in Australia, down the southern hemisphere. But pretty exciting. It's happening. It's going to be something that I think will be a real revelation, I think, in the whole aircraft industry. And even just modern technology they're using. So, for example, the old Concorde used to droop its nose down so that the pilots could see when they were landing, but then go up again when they were flying, so it was better with air resistance. Well, that's pretty complicated to do all that. None of that in the new Overture. It's all about augmented reality. So the pilots can sit in the cockpit and see virtually what's happening outside.
They can have as pointy a nose as they like.
That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, quite fascinating. Keep an ear out for the Boom Supersonic. It's something that
You have to listen carefully.
I think we'll be flying on by 2029 is the estimation that these will be entering service. So not that far away.
Now, you may be surprised to learn that there's a rather significant amount of tech still operating on this planet that relies on old, outdated coding. Apparently, if it ain't broke, then they don't fix it. But Matt, are these old codes as sturdy as a reliable old 65 Massey Ferguson tractor, or are they actually more like a ticking time bomb waiting to shut large chunks of infrastructure down to a grinding halt?
Well, they're working at the moment, and until you get a problem like the Y2K problem, when everyone went, oh no, those lines of code we wrote all those years ago, we didn't think about a 4-digit year, a 2-digit year was good enough, then until that happens, they're probably okay. But we've got modern software using old code in a whole range of different areas. Financial systems, banking networks, even the grid. There are parts of the grid that are running on code that was written in the 50s and 60s. Space missions. So think of Voyager. Actually, I think this is fascinating. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. So at the moment, Voyager 1 is about 25 billion kilometres from Earth, and Voyager 2 is about 21 billion kilometres back.
I think they've both crossed the edge of the solar system too, the zone where the sun no longer has any impact at all. It just looks like another star.
So they're gone. They're ones that are gone. 1977 they were launched, and so you've got to, by definition, have code that was written a long time ago because they didn't send someone with them to write some new code. They didn't
the code every now and then.
They didn't have computing power on board that could be suddenly, let's pull that chip out and put a new chip in. They're very, by today's standards, very old, clunky computers, but they've still got code running there.
Now, was it Boeing 747s that still operate using a floppy disk?
To update the navigation systems, I think we did a story on that once before about floppy disk, where to transfer that data, you put a floppy disk in to get that going.
Old school floppy disk. So I wonder if the coding on that is similar.
It could well be. But sorry, back to Voyager briefly.
Yeah, sorry.
23 hours. When the signals come back from Voyager 1, it takes about 23 hours for that signal to get from
That's
Voyager 1.
That's a broken conversation, isn't it?
That's pretty short. I missed that. Sorry. Could you
so
repeat
you've got
it?
to send your message and wait for 2 days for the reply.
Exactly right. And that's if they reply instantly. I'm busy at the moment. I'll get back to it tomorrow. Then you're in trouble.
I'll get to that.
Now, the old code is known to be reliable, so often when they're using some of these things like a satellite, you don't want to go and launch a satellite where you can't easily fix up the code and go, oh, I've got Jimmy who started work experience last week. He's just whacked up a bit of a program. We'll stick that on there and send that off. You want to put something on there that's reliable, that's obviously done the test of time, and then allow that to be used. But at what stage do you get to where you say we're going to have to upgrade this because there are fewer and fewer programmers? So COBOL, which ironically stands for Common Business Oriented Language, is not that common anymore, but it was back in the 50s and 60s. You're actually finding people that are retired now, people in their 60s and 70s have retired, and then they need to make a change to a program. They go, there's no one here that can actually write or understand COBOL, so let's get Mary back. Mary used to do a bit of programming. She's retired 20 years ago. She probably knows how to make this work again. So they're bringing back some old retired people to do some of that work. But, of course, the critical part here is they're using AI. So they're teaching AI, letting AI learn how to program, and then can you write a bit of COBOL to fix up this problem here or add this here? And more often than not, AI gets it pretty well right. Linux has got a command called indent, which is not that commonly used, but the code for that was written in 1976. It's still being used today, that same code. Even Amazon Web Services, Apple's iCloud, Booking.com, they've got programs written in Perl, which was a program language released in 1987. So there's some pretty old code on some of those as well. So it is quite fascinating. It's just one of those things, I think, that we do it. It all works at the time. We don't think of decades in the future when we write some of this stuff. We just go, yep, that's good enough. That does the job. We're all done. Not thinking that in 40 or 50 years' time someone's going to look at that and go, where are the comments? Where are the comments in this code?
Anyone still using punch cards?
I haven't found that. I haven't been able to find that, but maybe somewhere in there, maybe some old bunker with some computer system that's there for the end of
nuclear
time.
arsenal there in America is still using punch cards.
Damn, they got wet all these punch cards. I'm sure the hole was there.
The cockroaches have eaten them. YouTube burst onto the scene 20 years ago, almost to the day. Now, pretty soon after, more hours of videos were being uploaded to the site than would possibly be, or physically possible, to watch in a lifetime. And still new videos are being uploaded every second of every day. But do the maths on that, folks. For every viral video, how many lonely videos go almost completely unwatched?
Well, I can tell you one that's almost completely unwatched. We recently celebrated our 30th week anniversary.
Took a video and uploaded it.
Well, we had a video.
I'm going to jump on and give it a like.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We had a video from our wedding. It was done in the latest technology of the time, not Super 8 film, as some people have suggested to me, on VHS cassette.
VHS.
So we had on VHS cassette, and we were talking to a few friends around our 30th week anniversary. In fact, some of them were groomsmen and bridesmaids at our wedding. And we said, we've got that old VHS cassette, but I'd actually taken it off VHS and put it onto DVD. I've got that DVD. I should send it to you, but hold on. Are you telling me you don't have a DVD player anymore?
Do you have a DVD? Somewhere locked away in the vault?
Not even that, I don't think. So
did you have the whole ruffly shirt, can I ask? The ruffly, with the ruffly
for the wedding?
buttons for the wedding.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And the big loud lapel. And
the pleats,
the
I
long
prefer
hair.
to call them, rather than the ruffly shirt. The pleats, thank you. But we said, how are we going to give this to you? We can post out a couple of DVDs, or I can just upload that to YouTube. And it's a fairly long video. It's a fairly big sort of file. So sharing the file wouldn't have been that easy, but uploading it to YouTube, and then don't share it publicly, because I don't expect people to want to go and look at my wedding, but sharing that privately. So you tick the box to say private or unlisted. Sorry, I didn't go private, because private you've got to have a password. Unlisted. And then I can just send people that link. If they've got that link, they can go and watch it. Now, I think at the moment it's got about 4 views, and that's about all I expect.
That's fantastic. I'm calling that viral.
That's right. But this is what's happening with YouTube. More and more, YouTube is being used as a video vault, because for me, that was the most convenient way to share that video with some friends. It was something that I knew would be universal. I didn't have to worry about what sort of PC have you got. Can you be able to load this on? Will it run on your... It's YouTube. It'll run on whatever you've got. You can sit there, instead of playing on a game one day on your phone on the way to work, you can sit there and watch this video that you're a part of or whatever. So you've got that ability to go cross-platform, and you're pretty confident it's going to be there tomorrow. You're not worried about data being lost. You're not worried about backups of it. It's going to be there. Now, I'm sure YouTube has somewhere in their conditions to say don't rely on the data that's loaded up to YouTube. So I wouldn't rely on it, but we do rely on it, don't we?
Yeah,
so
we do.
Pretty much.
We're all very, very forgiving.
Now, one of the things that's fascinating, I think, is most people, when they think of YouTube, they think of creators. And Mr. Beast is the first one that comes to mind. Mr. Beast gets up to maybe 762 million views in a video, like an individual video.
That's amazing.
Now, when you consider that all the tickets to cinema across the US and Canada last year amounted to 823 million ticket sales, which I think is pretty impressive. One person with one video getting 762 million, you go, wow, he was almost a cinema by himself. Incredible. Now, so that's what most people think. But when you actually start to break it down, when you look at how many videos are out there, then the median number of views for a video on YouTube is 41. So when people post their video and they get...
So that includes Mr. Beast's value there.
That includes...
So that means a lot of people aren't getting any views.
Correct. If you get 130 views on your video, you're in the top third of YouTube's viewed videos. Because so many people post videos that have got no intention of going viral. They want to share it with some friends. They want to put it there. They want to record something. They think it's interesting. They think 10 of their friends might like to watch it. That's
Yeah, okay.
fine. What a great resource we've got there that obviously is paid for by the ads that we see during YouTube when we're watching YouTube. That's fine. People can live with that, or you can buy the premium version. But you've got this incredible resource, and the main resource there is just storage space, just having enough storage space. And to give you an idea of how much storage space you need, there at the moment are approximately 14.8 billion videos on YouTube. 500 hours of video are uploaded every minute. So when you say not enough time to watch all those in a lifetime, you're struggling enough time to watch all the videos in a year that are uploaded in a minute. But 1 billion hours are watched daily. When people say, what's the most influential social media site, and people think whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, often I say it's YouTube. Because who else? What other social media site has people watching 1 billion hours every single day? So if you want to influence something like a US election, you could change the algorithm to show ads from one side, not the other side, to all these people that are watching these 1 billion hours of video every single day. So, yeah, it is quite incredible, I think anyway. So maybe not think about it's been a failure because it's only got 130 views. Maybe not think about we always want to go viral with our videos. Maybe just think, isn't that a cool resource that we've got, that mankind has got to record and view all of those? And you absolutely must go and watch the very first video uploaded. One of the founders uploaded.
I did?
The Me at the Zoo.
When I was writing
Yeah.
my notes for this episode, I thought, Me at the Zoo.
And so
I'm going to go and check that out.
what I find fascinating about that is it's a terrible video.
It is.
It's a nothing video of someone just going, here I'm at the zoo. Gee, it's got a long trunk, that elephant. Yeah. 19 seconds. Now, and that was one of the founders, when that was uploaded and they talked about that, maybe they said, you know what, it's going to be viral and people are going to look at this wonderful video of a trunk of an elephant. Or maybe they said it's just somewhere for people to store their own videos, their own personal memories. Maybe they had no idea that suddenly some videos would amass 762 million views. I don't know what they were thinking at the time.
Yeah.
Their memory probably has changed over time as well. Maybe the narrative has changed ever so slightly. No, we always knew it would be like that. We knew people would upload all these viral videos. But when you think about that, it's a pretty underwhelming start to YouTube, isn't it? When you go, Me at the Zoo, this is
Humble.
Humble.
A humble beginning, might say, yeah?
I like it. A humble beginning. Not underwhelming. I'll take that back then. But use it. Use YouTube as a resource. It's fantastic.
Yeah, great idea. And that is all she wrote. Now, slap that book shut and save the bookmark for another time. Thanks for a cracking tech talk, Matt.
I'm just wondering if I should donate some of my stem cells to science to try and grow a computer out of my brain, or a brain out of my computer. I'm not sure which way
I thought
it
you were going
goes.
to donate your stem cells for some
Lab-grown meat. So some lab-grown
We're
meat.
sort of crossing some boundaries. Human meat tastes like chicken.
You can get some lab-grown meat that tastes like you and also have a computer that thinks like you. It's a scary world we're living in today.
Have a taste of my own rump. We'll save that for another story, folks. I think I'm just going to go and watch some YouTube, kill some time on the phone, or maybe play some games. Why not? Well, thank you for taking the time to include us in your busy schedules, everyone. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson is recorded by real humans as a series of ones and zeros floating through the cloud. Thanks for being there when they were recognised and reorganised into voice noises. I'm James Eddy, and as always, it's a pleasure to host this show each week. We hope that you'll be back with us in another week's time when we throw another bunch of ones and zeros right at you. In the meantime, take care, and we'll see you then.